So, welcome properly to the webinar. Yes, I will be doing most of the talking today, but feel free to interrupt me if you have any questions. Let me explain how this program of what comes after what will run today. So, in the beginning, I will explain in general about what nodes are in astrology. We touched on this a little bit this week during the weekly session, the discussion. That was conveniently for me on the same topic of the lunar nodes, but we were concentrating at the time on natal astrology and the birth chart. Well, here I'm going to talk more about mundane astrology and the current nodes in Gemini and Sagittarius. There will be a bit of astronomy, then a bit of the general meaning of the nodes in astrology and in the context of what's going on in the world today. Then I will look briefly at the signs Gemini and Sagittarius as several keywords and important points, which will then help us see how that translates into real events. Next will be a few other transits or factors in the chart of today, which I will show you as well, that I think are involved in the big picture, and they also influence the nodes, and the nodes influence the chart of, we can say it's a transitional chart of those 18 months where we're going to have the nodes in these signs since May this year. And then at the end, there will be a few topics of interest that the world is dealing with at the moment, which I thought I should point your attention to. I will just list them, and I will not express my opinion about how things are going to be or are supposed to be, or what my political points and opinions are, because that's something very subjective, but we can discuss it. If you're up to it, we can discuss it at the end. So I'm going to try to be rather quick with the presentation, so we have more time at the end for questions and the discussion of those 4 topics which I have selected for the connection I see in the news and in politics and in generally in society that these nodes are at the bottom of, I believe. Okay, shall we start? Any questions in the beginning? All right. So the nodes of the moon, I believe most of you know what they're all about. I expected new people, so I didn't know what the level of astrological knowledge will be. But for that reason, just in case, I would touch on the meaning of the nodes in general. What are they all about in astrology before we become more specific? This is a graph that I found online, which I think is very useful, and something that I haven't seen a better one of showing what exactly they are astronomically. And I think this is very easy. It's not something very complicated to understand. We have the nodes of the moon. Every planet in astrology has nodes, but the lunar nodes are the points of our attention, and the ones that are mostly studied and analyzed most in the context of the birth chart. The north node, called Rahu in the Eastern tradition, and Ketu is the south node. And they're also known by the names of the head and the tail of the dragon, which I'll touch on the next slide. But now, astronomically, what are the nodes in astrology? They are the points of intersection of 2 planes and 2 orbits. One is the orbit on which the moon rotates around our Earth. This is it. And because we are tilted, the Earth's orbit is slightly tilted, and this results in the moon rotating at about 5 degrees tilt difference between that and the plane of the Earth rotation around the sun, which is this larger circle here. So these 2 planes, as they don't coincide, they cross each other somewhere, and they cross each other in these 2 points, which we call the lunar nodes in astrology. The north node is the point at which the moon goes north or up in latitude when it crosses the line of the ecliptic. This is the line of the ecliptic, the other name for the zodiac and for the Earth's orbit around the sun. And when it crosses downwards or southwards, we call that point the south node in astrology. Now, this is just what they are physically. but we're more interested in what they mean and why we study them in the first place. And here is what I'd like to go through quickly here. So the north node, the head of the dragon, the south node, the tail of the dragon. These are karmic points, and they are the basis of evolutionary astrology that studies the meaning and the consequence of something that we assume comes before the birth and the birth chart the way we have it. These are karmic nodes, lunar nodes, that are in their basis emotional, because we're talking about the moon. They are this intersection between the most important two cycles that human life revolves in. And human life is just a mini model of the whole life of the universe and the world that we live in, which also goes through different ages and stages. And when we look at the nodes in the perspective of mundane astrology that studies more political and social events, this is what we're looking for: trends of the past against trends of the present. In the birth chart of someone, the nodes touch on usually something which is very controversial. I don't know, I'm still struggling to choose what to start from here, because I want to escape from that usual concept of karma, of consequence of what you did some time before, presumably in a previous lifetime. We can be free not to go in that direction and not believe in the concept of reincarnation at all, which some people feel more comfortable with, others not that much. But we can always start from assuming that there is a reason we were born with this birth chart in the first place. And usually that comes with some conditioning. The conditioning is reflected in the meaning of the south node here. And it speaks about something of an unresolved past, an issue, a challenge, a memory, an emotional memory, lunar memory, which is not of real events that we have gone through and we now come back with, or any sort of personality we are able to come back with. But it's an accumulation of influences based on what we have been going through again and again, presumably before, or what has accumulated as our ancestral or family karma. And it's coming back in this particular lifetime as an issue to be balanced, as something to be worked on. And we are normally given a second chance to go through that and explore new ways of solving this dilemma that is inevitably causing some sort of disbalance issue in our current evolution in our life. The South Node can give you so many ideas about what's wrong in a particular case when you look at the birth chart, in terms of what this person may be struggling with, escaping from old habits, as this is what the South Node normally revolves around, a point of least resistance that we were used to, repeating again and again, and which is leading to some sort of self-sabotaging tendencies. It's so difficult to escape from that, because we also tend to be very good in this same tendency that we are repeating again and again. It is not just a skipped step or something we did wrong or maybe did too much and it was an excess, but it's also a hidden talent and ability which very easily actually comes out to the surface, and we can reach out to it and start working with it. Unfortunately, it normally doesn't pay off the way we expect, and that's the trouble with the South Node. It sounds a bit too negative, and when we discussed it on Thursday, somebody said, why be so negative about the South Node? Well, actually, it's got a positive meaning as well. Yes, it does. It is. I always start from the negative, because this is the way we can help people and we can help ourselves get out of the, repetition, automated reaction of going back naturally to that habit, which is destructive in its base, and it is blocking the potential of the charts and of everything that we should be able to otherwise work with a lot more efficiently in the birth chart, if we only allow the tendencies of the opposite sign, the positive qualities of the opposite sign of the South Node, to come to the surface and to somehow apply them in our everyday life. Now, the South Node and the North Node are always opposite signs of the zodiac and opposite signs, opposite houses in the birth chart. If we go back quickly to the previous slide, and this is the ecliptic or the zodiac circle around the sun, then we can see that as the Earth travels around it during the year, the points of the intersection will move to the signs of the zodiac. That takes about 6 months is 1/3 of each of this cycle. Some people also divide the cycle into thirds, but usually 1.5 years is approximately how long it takes for the nodes to switch from one pair of signs to another. So currently we are in Sagittarius and Gemini, but let's say a few words about the North Node, which is how we eventually resolve the South Node imbalance, and how we manage to bring things in some sort of equilibrium, at least a little bit. It's not a question of trying to completely disregard the sign of the South Node and become the sign of the North Node, but it's about learning how to practice the North Node in a positive way. It shows us the way forward. It usually teaches a new skill, something that we feel a little bit uncomfortable and not very skilled in, because presumably we were not having a lot of chances to try that energy before. So we need to overcome the inertia of repeating the same course of action as we had always been, and choose a more difficult path, as what the North Node usually presumes. It helps build character, and to me this is the key to the chart. If you are able to speak to someone about the sign and house of their North Node and give some positive direction of how practically this energy can be exercised, then this is probably the thing that we can make the most progress with in life, and to help the solar energy as well. As you can see here, how these two cycles interacting, the lunar cycle and our yearly seasonal cycle around the sun, is actually pointing back to the moon and the sun in the chart. So if we work out our nodes, and if we try to and manage to balance them at least a little bit, then we are helping the two main forces of life that we are charged with, the solar and the lunar, to find their best channel and to work in the best possible way in the chart as well. So they're connected with everything else in the chart, but they go in opposite direction. They always, almost always, because there's slight exceptions to that, when they go backwards, backwards to their normal course, which is always backwards to everything else, to all the other planets in the chart. And this is symbolical to how the nodes are trying to get us away from the everyday current issues and energies in the chart as planets, and to point our attention to something which has a much longer and further back history, the South Node pointing to a very distant past before this lifetime, and the North Node is not just about the present challenge and karmic task that we're born to resolve, but it's also about the future evolution of what I imagine to be the thing, whatever we can call it, either the soul or any other word which is not that rich in meaning, but this mysterious something that appears in the beginning and is not the ego that is born through the birth chart during the process of life, but is something that we can say now with this new baby, let's say, we've got a new Aquarian here. it has been an Aquarian predominantly in all of its previous history, whatever and whoever this creature was before. And this is what it's bringing to the world with it. This is the baggage, the South Node. But now it's going to have a bunch of planets. It's going to have a new solar direction. It's going to have its, lunar emotions, which are also reflected through the nodes. This Aquarian energy would need to learn something new, which balances it. And that's going to be the opposite Leo energy. So that's just an example. But what I love the most about the effects of the nodes, and especially the North Node, and maybe you are sharing this, that it's unfortunate that mostly the North Node is mentioned and the South Node is skipped, and even professional astrologers don't talk a lot about the South Node. They're inseparable in my view. When I calculate the chart, I always have both of them shown in the chart, and I look to the aspects of both of them because they're the ends of a line. And when something happens by transit, let's say, to one, inevitably it happens to the other. But going back to what I was saying, that my favorite point about the North Node in particular is that it gives this providential help. That's why I've got this on the list. What it means is that things work out if we do use consciously the positive qualities of our North Node sign in the area where it's given in the chart. Then things somehow miraculously very often start ordering themselves in our life. I don't know if you have noticed this, but doors are opening and we can feel that we have made steps forward. There has been a positive change. Okay, moving on. Enough is enough for this because I'm sure you know most of this. But now, currently, in the bigger picture, outside of our own personal birth chart, but in the world in general, we're dealing with the influence of the nodes, which is slightly different because the basic idea is the same as what I already told you with the birth chart. But now we need to apply this same principle to the evolution of the world, to society. Now, there are many societies, they run in different directions. Some are in some respects more advanced than others, or concentrate on different things in life more. So we can by no means put everything under the same denominator here. Most of what I'm going to speak about today is the effect of the nodes on Western culture, on most of the countries that we tend to live in, which includes the United States, Europe, maybe parts of China, of Asia, and so on. The societies which are kind of mostly conditioned by new technology, and where the way things are run, countries are run, is similar, at least mostly similar. So by no means this is going to apply to everything, but the nodes entered Gemini and Sagittarius in May this year. Before that, they were in Cancer and Capricorn, so because they go backwards. And the North Node was in the previous sign before, so it was in the next sign, not in the previous sign before. And when they were in Cancer and Capricorn, what we needed to generally deal with was a shift of the balance from Capricorn to Cancer. And this coincided with the major transits of the big planets, especially Pluto, Jupiter, and Saturn through Capricorn. And they kind of reinforced the idea of having to relinquish certain negative tendencies of Capricorn, because Capricorn was the South Node. And not that everything about Capricorn was negative, but we needed to look and expose and reform in this short-term period of 6 months. It started from the end of 2018 and lasted until this May. So that's what's the background of the current situation. Now we are on a completely different track. We are not trying to revisit our feelings about and organization of our homes and family life, the Cancer topics, but we are turning attention to Gemini. So Gemini is the point of the North Node at the moment, and from this sign in particular, we can learn so many practical tips about what may be a better idea to vote with and to concentrate on, so that things run their course evolutionary and generally the way that astrology is kind of assuming and giving us ideas about. Now, I think that ultimately with the nodes, things mix up too much between the two nodes. And we cannot completely say, think of everything you can possibly think related to Sagittarius and discard that and refute that. And then think of everything to do with Gemini and, concentrate on doing it more and more. It's a bit more complicated than this, and we'll see why. But this is a chart of today. I think it's very interesting because that's the chart of 4 o'clock when we started in London. And the nodes are right on the ascendant descendant, which I thought was a good sign for the meeting and for the webinar, because what could be more energized and more, how can I say, pointed to the meaning of what we're doing, to having a coincidence between the horizon of the moment and the nodal axis, which even in natal astrology is considered to be one of the most important positions someone can have in their charts if your nodes are on your ascendant descendant. And at the same time, we've got the Sagittarius ascendant, which is the sign of the big picture of, I think I call it the political sign in my own terminology, because that's the cultural sign of what we all have in common, regardless of where we come from and what we want to do individually as people. These, education, religion, and all those sorts of general keywords about Sagittarius. Also, I found it very interesting that Mercury is right at the cusp of the 9th house today. And now so many Sagittarian signs in this chart. I thought that could be my point of reference for you later about some other transits and progressions, just a couple that are affecting the current situation. And it's not just where the nodes are. Obviously, the nodes are not staying on the horizon. They move all the time in the houses of the chart at the moment. But that's why we are analyzing the signs and not the houses. Now, just to mention, the last time we had that same nodal axis was between May 83 and September 84. So, and then October 2001 and April 2003. I think especially the second one is very interesting because I see something in common between what happened just before October 2001, September 2001, and how much of a shock that was to the world, and this whole confusion of now what and what this whole incident means, September the 11th, and the way the world found itself in a situation of chaotic thinking and misinformation, disinformation, confusion in general, which is very typical for what we can expect from the informational signs, Gemini and Sagittarius, and the issues they can create. If you know someone, maybe these are the dates, more about people you may know that are born with these nodes. I think, Shinta, you were also born with the nodes in Sagittarius and Gemini, but reversed. So I didn't go back in time more than this because I thought there is no point. But every 18 and a little bit years, we've got those same nodes. So if you go back that period in the past or move it forward, you would find periods of time when people were born with these nodes. And I think if that happens to be you at the moment, this period is even more important personally for you, as it will affect you directly, and it will challenge your vision of your own karmic imbalances and lessons that you need to apply to your personal life. And what you see out there in the world, what happens, will provoke you probably, and will wake you up to something that will hit home a lot more than issues that were related to, say, the previous notes, for example. So now a few things to remind ourselves, or learn if you are quite new to astrology, but about Gemini and Sagittarius as signs, as energies in general, because I think that would be very helpful to then see how this can play out as a positive and a negative. Every energy can be dual in its nature. It is dual always in astrology, and it involves in its archetype an immense amount of symbols. that we can by no means just list neatly like that and consider that we know everything about that sign. Let's try to escape from the cliches about the signs, but see what still is at the basis of them and what is motivating this energy, what is making it act the way it acts. So with Gemini and Mercury, because it's ruled by Mercury, and if you know about the nature of that planet, of the mind and the intellect, we can say that this is the sign of intellectual curiosity, of that kind of intellect and mind which is always hungry for new information, that is adding more and more to its perspective of the world and is helping it have as much of a wide view of what is out there available to be known and to be experienced as possible. The reason why Gemini is what it is not isolated from the context of the zodiac. I think the most important and probably the best way to approach any sign of the zodiac is to see where is it in the context of the circle. This being the third sign, one of the early signs, one after Taurus and the one before Cancer, can already give us a lot of information about it. And we can even assume, then adding to it that it's air, belongs to the element of air, what it will be doing and how it will be approaching the world. So everything started with Aries. Something was initiated, something was born. It was keen and very enthusiastic to get out there in the world and assert its existence. Then in Taurus, this new thing established itself as a material reality. It realized that it's got possessions, it's got a body, that it wants to build a stable material base so that it can survive even further down the line. And it built some sort of power. So it had these resources. So now there is something to be done, which adds one more step of the way to this development of the personality that we can imagine the whole zodiac as. So when we come to Gemini, the third sign, we have someone like an adolescent personality. Somebody very young, let's imagine, that has been through these first initial stages, but still doesn't know anything about the world, doesn't know how to speak, how to exchange, how to communicate. It's got to develop its brain, its knowledge, its reaction of the nervous system and of those sensory experiences that Gemini is so interested normally to acquire and to accumulate. Very often blamed to be superficial. I think this is not very fair because we fail to understand and appreciate how important it is for it to play the role at the stage of the zodiac that it's positioned. It won't be able to play that role if it's very concentrated and not that superficial, because it needs to experience as much as possible. It needs to, acquire different experiences, which involves having connections with many people. It doesn't have the time to build these connections very deeply, or the knowledge it has about many different subjects very deeply, because it's in a hurry to accumulate more and more of a different kind. So I think we need to appreciate that when we judge Gemini. But it's about information exchange, about building bridges between different people, and also exercising its own ability to have a quick-witted mind that is able to survive in the environment. The first signs of the zodiac are very much about personal survival. This is also a very personal sign, and is very motivated by my own interest, what I want to do. I'm learning something, I'm acquiring education, let's say, but this is mostly in terms of facts and individual pieces, which will help me be stronger in that mental way. And so it's very connected in my mind to building a system, like a nervous system, a net of connections that it can always go back to, and can always pick up the phone and have a problem solved due to its different ways of accumulating connections with people and entities out there in the world in the meantime. And the knowledge that Gemini has at the end of the day becomes its personal power and its personal safety. So the good thing about it is that this whole action of acquiring information is making very open-minded and willing to listen, willing to exchange, and to not judge very quickly. It is interested to know what's out there, so it's very much a scientific type of mind, a researcher type of mind that allows itself to be surprised and to be, led into areas that it hasn't been before. And even that's one of its conditions of what it requires from other people, to give it the chance to move around and explore. But usually that is within a very constrained vocal circle around it. It's not interested to go very far. It is interested to explore its immediate environment and master it. That's very important. And that's one of the biggest differences between that and the other side, or the Sagittarian side. And so this is also partially why Gemini is so superficial, let's say, or going around the surface, because it just needs to be able to know what's going on around it. Immediate family, close connections, the neighborhood. It's the symbol of the neighborhood or the local community. We can expand as far as, let's say, our country, because that can be, let's say, our boundary again. But Gemini is looking to draw a boundary. It's not very confident yet to go out in the wide world and to mix up with the unknown, when the unknown is something that cannot be understood, seen, and mastered quickly. And that which cannot be understood and mastered quickly is the bigger concepts in life, like culture, like what other people think about the world, people that are very different from us in different countries, let's say, for example, which leads us naturally to the opposite sign of Sagittarius, which is ruled by Jupiter. And Jupiter is so different as an energy. We have this contrast between the local and the global. Here we have the collective minds with Sagittarius and Jupiter, the one that wants to go outside of the boundaries of its immediate circle. And it feels like it's constricted there, that its vision is limited, because here it's looking for ultimate bigger truths. And the far rules over the near. Sagittarius is so interested in expanding its horizons, but now not just having all sorts of different experiences so that we don't miss anything from that life, as Gemini is usually concerned about, but it has no problem to focus its attention on a concept, on an idea, on a belief system, which it usually feels intuitively through the energy of fire now, that it's supporting, and that it wants to work for, promote, explore even further, and compare and contrast it to the ideologies and beliefs of other people like itself. So there is this freedom also and quest spirit in Sagittarius, which is connected to all this, because it needs to want to go far in order to meet something that's very, very different and very even surprisingly challenging to its own belief system. We know how fanatical this energy can become when it fixates on its beliefs, but there is something in it which actually almost like pushes it into situations where it will have the chance to challenge its own beliefs, because it will meet something different. It may try to convert that other person or that other culture to its own, or convincing it that its own truth is the best, or it may assimilate, and assimilation is a very important, I think, keyword for Jupiter, of actually merging with other influences and allowing them to transform our point of view, while at the same time we transform their point of view. But a lot of Sagittarian qualities come from a creative vision, which is imagined, which is intuited. This is the last sign of fire, and it doesn't have a rational explanation usually, where and from where it knows what it knows. And at the same time, it's got this very good connection to the truth in terms of seeing the big trends and connecting the pieces and being able to generalize and put it all together without having gone through all the small points and dots in the line, but actually seeing it one as a whole. It's almost like looking at the two different strategies of looking at a birth chart, for example. We can do it as predominantly as a Gemini, as a mercurial strategy, or we can do it as a Jupiterian one. I think this is probably mostly what astrologers differ among themselves from. Some are very mercurial to an extent that they get bogged down into techniques, into all sorts of calculations. They want to see every single point in the chart, connect all the dots, and make sure they haven't missed anything. And to them, this is the way analysis is made, so that some conclusion eventually pops out from that, informational analysis, logical analysis. While with Jupiter and Sagittarius, it's more about intuition. It's more about seeing the whole chart as a big picture from the start, or at least trying, because that's something very difficult to do if you don't look into the individual pieces. But normally these people with more of a Sagittarian, Jupiterian trend, they just see it. They just intuit which one may be the most important factor or a bunch of factors. So here, let's remember mostly this tendency of Sagittarius to focus on something which needs to be the universal truth, valid for everyone, across the board, and see how this can play out now in the world situation where we need to somehow see how Sagittarius, in particular, can go wrong, how it can mess it up, or be guiding us into a direction that's not, say, beneficial for what is supposed to be happening at this step of the way. Not that everything Sagittarian is negative, but this is where this whole thing is coming from, that we would have, as a society, the tendency to repeat old Sagittarian mistakes and to come back to things that have been done back in history, and we have seen what the results of them have been, but we're repeating them again because there may be this new enthusiasm towards Jupiterian, Sagittarian way of seeing the world, trying to join all sorts of ideologies or looking for them in the first place, being a bit intolerant towards other people's views and so on. But we'll see more about that as we go forward. Then, this is actually what I'm referring to, the lessons of now, the lessons of balancing the axis of Gemini and Sagittarius, and a few points that we can mention here. In terms of Gemini positive action, for example, we can try to see both sides of a story and try to become as objective as possible about something, especially now that we're running through this crisis and there are so many different opinions about what's going on and how we should approach it. It's probably better, if we follow the astrological thread, to take on the Gemini way now. And rather than emotionally or intuitively choosing a side, try to do our research and ask questions and see what other people will say. Listen to other people's opinions. Pay attention to those new ideas which may never have crossed our path before, as they may illuminate the situation more than a predefined thinking. And this great quality of Gemini to adapt to change quickly and to be flexible, to be willing to be flexible, will probably be one of the strongest things that we can use right now. Also, especially maybe if you've seen, I know most of you are astrologers, if you've seen people with this nodal axis as a birth axis, when their south node is in Sagittarius and north node in Gemini, they have the tendency to isolate a little bit in their world of interests and to mix up just with people that agree with them most of the time. But they're not very interested in others, in other people as human beings, as the mind of Sagittarius is very social. It's more directed towards concepts, ideas, things like that. It's more intellectual, and it's not very personal. So it would probably be a good idea now if we mix back with our communities and try to speak to them and see what happens in that immediate circle that we are in. We may be a big like philosophizer, Sagittarius kind of energy more in terms of our own personal energies, but in order to run with the wave now and understand it better, it will be beneficial to allow to be surprised by what others say. When we look at Sagittarius and how it can improve on what it's already doing, on how it can, have in mind certain tendencies that may be negative on its side, the greatest thing is self-righteousness. This tendency of Sagittarius to think that it knows best. And now I'm going to, the Sagittarian says, I'm going to tell you how to live your life. I'm going to impose my best strategy because I see it all. I see the big picture. Sometimes they do. Sometimes they are actually right. And they're very, when I say they, I don't mean anybody in particular because nobody's just a Sagittarius, but this archetype, this energy. But at the moment, this is dangerous. At the moment, we can see that this can go wrong more often than it can go right. And it's just a warning. It's just something to bear in mind that this self-righteousness of Sagittarius that often grows into fanaticism and becomes extremely cruel and extremely intolerant could lead us in directions that are not beneficial for the world in general right now. And we may need to repair them, or we actually are probably coming back to previous instances in history when similar things were going on, and we were, among everything else, we were facing the dark side of Sagittarius. And I can personally already see how a lot of that dark side of Sagittarius is coming out, and it actually intensified more after May. After May, even though the whole coronavirus virus crisis started in February, March in most countries, it actually started in May, that trend of talking a lot, discussing, arguing, having those politicizing even a lot more than before, and all sorts of social trends that I will list later on so that we can discuss them together if you wish. But now a few more things is that obviously Sagittarius has this tendency to pay allegiance to something. The Jupiterian force in every chart is that thing that points us to what of the existing system that we were born among and culture we would choose to pay allegiance to, what religion we would normally either be given or choose to follow, or what political party, what cultural trend, whatever in the big picture that we deliberately and by choice join is a Sagittarian thing. But now this would be questioned and this would be challenged across the board, I believe. And we would have to use our own brains, Gemini, to think for ourselves as much as we possibly can, because the times are telling us astrologically that it will be very, how can I say, it will be probably more safe for us and more wise as a whole to expect Sagittarius going wrong than the other way around. And we can try to be more practically helpful, because Sagittarius is often misunderstood. Its concepts are not always heard. It has a hard time communicating its ideas when they're not general beliefs and dreams and fantasies for the future. It's very future oriented, but when they need to be applied for the here and for the now. And the sign of the here and now is Gemini. This is the sign that can teach so much about how to not just enjoy the moment, but live in the moment, to all the other energies of the zodiac. So I thought that's another thing that we can try to do. Be practically helpful to people. Then I thought there would be inevitably a couple of things mixed up in these nodal axis influence that we're dealing with now that are also important. Gemini and Sagittarius are part of the mutable cross in astrology. So the mutable cross is the 4 mutable signs. Just for those of you that may know not that, all the signs of the zodiac are divided in 3 categories: cardinal, fixed, and mutable. And when we start from the first sign, they revolve in this order: Aries cardinal, Taurus fixed, Gemini mutable. And then when we continue forward, we repeat the same thing. Gemini and Sagittarius are both mutable in that respect. And mutable is another word for changeable, for adaptable, for one that's willing to revisit its current direction and to get out of the zone that it has been operating so far, change direction. Basically, it's a promoter of change kind of mode of operation, while the other two are much more fixated or directional. Cardinals give the starting point of something, they give the initial impulse and kind of say to all the other signs and all the other energies in what new trend they need to look now and comply with, or what direction they need to take. Then the fixed signs take it from there. They work on it continuously over time. They almost go in a circle, trying to make it work, and they stay with the thing. That's very important for them, but that's why they're so change resistant. And they need the mutable signs, the ones that we're looking at today mostly, to wake them up, say enough is enough for that, as it has either run out its course or something needs to be improved or changed, either for the good or for the so either we are trying to look in the future and see new opportunities of how things can be improved as a new direction, as a new initiative. And this is what Gemini and Sagittarius are mostly about. They're procreative. They do like a positive, they promote a positive kind of change. While the other two signs in the mutable cross, Pisces and Virgo, that are making natural squares to Gemini and Sagittarius, they are also change makers, but they are trying to more repair something or disregard things that are no longer working. They're saying not this and not that anymore. They're not fixed to the future. They're fixed to the past. They're trying to more dispose of blockages and things that are not allowing the organism to move forward. But okay, I thought in this in this respect, we have to look at what's going on at the other two crosses of the signs, because this will give challenges to the picture, and this will provoke Gemini and Sagittarius axis to somehow or color their motivation in a different way. The square from Virgo, so the nose is squaring Virgo and everything that happens to be in Virgo in that period. Now we've got the sun in Virgo, but that's a relatively temporary thing. Yes, we can say pretty much in a few days, the sun will be squaring the nodes. And that would be important because that's the vital energy. That's, giving a lot of what's the direction of the current month. And one of the reasons why we may think September and the beginning of October could be very eventful months, because they involve the sun in the nodal axis. The nodal axis, we can think of it as potentially provoking, even though it's not directly doing it, but for the reason of the cycle having reached that point, they're provoking these sort of issues out there in the world. And the sun being involved, Mercury also, but from tomorrow we're having a different Mercury. So today is actually, interestingly, also is the last day of Mercury in Virgo. And maybe I'm not sure if it's the last day, but it's the last degree. In any way, we are in Virgo season, so that's important. On the opposite side, we've got Neptune, and I'll speak about Neptune quickly in a minute, which is even more of an important factor and in a longer span of time. But let's try to see things in this way. How are the nodes affected by the square in general, but in Virgo? Virgo is this sign of discrimination, which adds another point towards Gemini, because they're ruled by the same planet, Mercury. So it can stimulate the Gemini expression of the axis to be even more bogged down into details and judgments made on the principle of discriminating what works and what doesn't work, which information is correct and which fact is not actually a fact but is more a speculation. So Virgo will put pressure on checking the facts, or how have we reached our judgments. But also there is this thing about guilt around Virgo. The tendency to feel guilty of not being good enough. I won't go into much detail about this because it's just alluding towards this. But you see how that can play into the picture, and how this can mix up with the social issues of some people blaming other people for, say, being irresponsible, or some people blaming themselves for their actions, and then that motivates what they do out there. Criticism of one's own beliefs is also something that we may be sensitive to, extremely sensitive. As if someone has been under criticism for something, then they are not going to be able to so freely go out there and be a Sagittarius, Gemini, in one respect, but this will be motivating it in the background as well, especially you have been criticized religiously, let's say, the Sagittarius side of things, or if you have some doubts, and this is also involved in the guilt, about your own intellect and needing to rely on other people's opinion or some authorities to tell you what to think and how to think. A lot of that can come from the Virgo insecurity sense. Then if we look at Pisces, then in general Pisces, not just the Neptune, but Neptune is making things even more complicated right now. It may be difficult to express the Sagittarian side of things, like what we imagine, what we are trying to purvey as a concept. It gets more and more difficult to put your point across. And some people may feel a lot of blockage in, having this cautious attitude of, shall I express what I think? Would I be misunderstood? Maybe other people will project things to what I say that I didn't even mean, and that's going to exacerbate a whole war of discussion. So many people may be trying to, silencing themselves because, or trying to silence other people by that respect, on that basis, the Neptunian basis, the Pisces basis of, another sort of insecurity, but it's more about, it's lost usually for its words. It's not very mercurial, that energy. It's just the opposite to that. It imagines and it intuits, but it can hardly explain. So if you have a difficulty, let's say, if you have things going in Pisces in your own personal chart, these will be also squaring the nodes right now. And a typical case, for example, if your Mercury is in Pisces and is squaring the nodes, just as an example, that can lead to that effect mostly, as you would feel more and more insecure in your communication abilities. Then we have this Neptune Pisces melancholy feeling. It's like Sagittarius a little bit because they're both part of the later part of the zodiac. It's also very generalizing energy. And Jupiter was ruling Pisces not until a long time ago. There is lots of connections between the signs of Sagittarius and Pisces. And one of them is this search for meaning. While Sagittarius is more about the meaning of how we run our lives as a society, let's say, the principles, the ethics, and so on. With Pisces, it becomes more to do with what unifies us spiritually and emotionally. And the collective emotion right now is very unstable and very confused. That's also because of Neptune. But there is this overall feeling of meaninglessness, maybe, and loss of direction. So many things are going on, Gemini, very quickly, that we lose track of who we are as a society, where we want to be. History basically gets built at the moment, and it's so eventful, like never before, that it's very easy to lose track if you are very inclined towards this Piscean side of things. And even if you're not, it's out there in the air, because ultimately Pisces, which is now in its own sign, Neptune, now in its own sign of Pisces. That was since February 2012 and will be for a few more years until 2025. But we're right in the middle at the moment, or a little bit over the middle of that period. And this is when Neptune finds itself hit by the nodes as well, by square on both sides. At the moment, it is squaring them already. And as the next months pass, and from now until the end of the period of Sagittarius Gemini nodes, which is the beginning of the following year, 2022, this tendency will get bigger and bigger, because you see how Neptune at the moment is at it's retrograde, so it will continue forward at some point, and it will reach the later degrees of the sign, while at the same time the nodes will be running from later degrees to earlier degrees of the sign. So they would be meeting more and more in a square in the next, especially in the next couple of months. So a lot of things could be provoked by that. I'm not an expert in mundane astrology, and you see how my approach is more psychological, and that's how I would like to keep things. So I don't engage too much into trying to even imagine what is going to happen because of this. But we can assume so many things. This orientation can be connected to Neptune. Neptune always sets that social trend of common emotion. The collective unconscious, that's what we normally call Neptune, and how we are all under the influence of some force which is greater, higher in our individual lives, that sets the trends of fashion, of glamour outside in the world in this particular time. And it also gives those hooks of, what the common imagination or illusions are directed towards, and what we get allured by as well. So Neptune is, in other respects as well, also could be connected to the pandemic and to all those the hidden disease, the hidden energies of Pisces underneath the surface that are affecting everybody universally, and they don't discriminate between races, cultures, ages, and anything. Well, maybe the age factor is the only one we can say Neptune discriminates at the moment, but we don't know exactly what we're dealing with when Neptune is involved. And there is potential for disillusionment after we have been maybe illusioned by something, and this underlying fear that, of the unknown and what comes next. So it's a double emotional Neptunian energy, because it's not just Neptune, but it's in its own sign. Okay, now I don't know how we are with time. Oh, we are actually quite good with time. So this will give us a chance to go through. Now I've got 4 slides like this for you, with which this whole thing finishes. And then after those 4 slides, I'm going to leave some time for questions and discussion. And these are just things that I'm going to read to you pretty much, because I didn't want to, with what I'm sharing with you today, my point is not to express a political point or to tell you what I think about issues. It's just an urge to think about Gemini and Sagittarius in terms of these common trends out there that we can all witness. I think there is no argument that in these 4 particular areas of life, a lot is changing and a lot is challenging at the same time. So the first one I chose is the sphere of the public and the social media. Everything that we can think of in terms of media. The internet, television as we know it, radio stations, whatever you can think of. Traditional channels and not that traditional channels. So the first thing that we can observe, obviously, is that there is I think it's not a very strong word to say, a revolution in the way people receive and share and exchange news stories and facts about the world. We don't rely that much anymore on the normal channels. We either question them or they fall out of fashion for one reason or another. And it's with the era, the technological era of the internet, that's now it's probably in its peak. We mostly use social media to exchange and to discuss what this brings. Maybe you tell me after that, and we can see what we think about that. But because of Gemini, I was like, we have an influx of Gemini energy now in this since the beginning of the year, middle of the year. Has been an increased interest in small talk and gossip, and the personal lives of celebrities, let's say. Video after video on YouTube, I can see. I mean, this is, I think, enormously more content than before put out there. Maybe because people have the free time and they're staying more at home now because of the situation, and they create a lot more content and comment on it as well and share it. But you know how this is connected with Gemini. Gemini is so much about individual pieces, details, and the tendency to gossip is probably one of its negative tendencies, and this may be put to the test of how much we want of that. We may get tired of that at some point later on. Also, we can see that because of Gemini, maybe when you read an article or you listen to the news or something that you consume as information, it tends to be more detailed and more specific. Now, probably because of the pandemic, we are inundated with numbers, all sorts of numbers. And the sorter of numbers is Gemini. And the bestower of names, they call it Gemini, the one that puts a label on everything. And also there is this tendency to label every single thing and look deeper into the microscopic vision of Gemini. Gemini is that energy that looks under a microscope and tries to deduct the whole picture from the details. So yeah, so much speculation out there as well and talking. Then we have this problem that it's getting even more difficult. It's always been, I guess, but now even more difficult to distinguish information from misinformation. There are so many conflicting views out there, so many different scenarios of how people explain reality, and it's very difficult to understand what's really happening. It's not impossible. And the trend that I see is this media of the past. Like, for example, maybe you've heard a big topic on the news at the moment in the UK is the role of the BBC, which is like the public broadcasting company, traditionally, very popular here and in the world, the whole world, is under a lot of scrutiny right now for various reasons. And people are basically questioning what it's supposed to do. Is it doing what it's supposed to do? Is it playing its role? Is its role meant to change in some way, and how? And it's not the only institution of that sort that's questioned right now. And in the age of technology and internet, people are at the same time building new platforms that are taking up so much of the attention of the public, and they even seem to be taking over. I don't know if that's going to really happen, but they seem to be really taking over the traditional media for good or bad. Now, the next one is the global travel and migration, which will be affected. When we say travel and migration, the first association is more Sagittarius, as that's the sign of long distance movement and travel and exploration and so on. So following the line of thinking of we're looking for problems with Sagittarius and solutions with Gemini, potentially, I thought this could be more of an exacerbation of problems of mixing of cultures, religions, and people going from one country to another could be something of a big topic, like it is also in the UK at the moment. I appreciate not all of you are from the UK, and that may not be relevant to you, but something is boiling here big time in the last month or so, and it's probably not reached its peak yet, about a great number of people entering illegally to the UK. And so again, this stirs a lot of debates about Is that good? Is that bad? Shall we allow more people? Shall we, be compassionate and so on? And is that really what is going on? Or are we talking about something that needs to be fixed? But it's becoming an issue. And I think that issue is very typical Sagittarius, Gemini. Then, this, again, very typical dilemma between the two signs, city life against country life. As a whole, our lifestyle choices are changing so much because we have now figured out how to use resources more efficiently in the Western world and how to be, working online, let's say, and many different arrangements. Then there is a choice again between how we want to organize our everyday life and family life. Do we want to live a city life, a busy city life, or do we want to explore the countryside? So city life is usually a very Gemini atmosphere. Like London, for example, is dubbed to be a Gemini. And I think it makes a lot of sense because it's a metropolitan city where a lot of different things mix up. There is a rich cultural life where, you can pick and choose from many things, not just entertainment, but also there is this wide net of interchange in general. While Sagittarius is a lot more connected to nature and to this virgin nature, the living in the wilderness is one of the people having a lot of Sagittarian energy may have preference for that, and connecting with the natural cycle of for example, how you should lead your day and how you should exercise more, connect with your body more, rather than living in the mind like Gemini is very used to. So that would create, now we are stopped, we cannot travel as much as we did. Maybe that's very directly a Sagittarian problem. We can't fly as much as we used to. There is a restriction imposed because of the situation, and we need to maybe not, if not like choose between city and country, but rather mix with the local community, want it or not, because we would have to exist more in the local community for a while, Gemini, than we did. And the alternative lifestyle choices include that digital nomad trends in the last years. I don't think this is a new trend necessarily. It didn't start this year, but it has a lot to do with when Pluto was in Sagittarius, was probably when this whole thing began developing in the world as a whole. And then over the course of time, mostly because now we can work from home. Many professions are possible to be run. Businesses are run from home. Many people, including myself, choose to have a rather strange for the older times lifestyle of constant, if not constant movement from place to place and coexistent in different places at the same time, but changing completely, escaping the city life, escaping the metropolitan jungle, and going to somewhere where you are like living a more balanced lifestyle and still working. So I don't know if this is, again, I'm not saying, I'm not putting a judgment on this, but it's out there and it's big. But you see, isn't it interesting how, because Gemini is at the forefront right now, we are actually having a step back with that at the moment, and something is preventing the widespread of travel. So I already mentioned the border control issues and stuff like that. I know they exist in other countries. This situation around the UK getting out of the European Union is connected very much here, and it's closely linked to the many people coming to the UK, because it's this deadline now, now or never. Come now, try to come now, or it may be more difficult for you later, which I think is probably just creating more of a problem than it would usually be. But this is so much in line with the astrological picture that it's exactly this year and the next year that we're having these nodes. And I expect that the moment the nodes switch to the next signs, to Taurus and Scorpio, in the beginning of 22, these sorts of issues will probably not be in the news that much. I mean, they won't be the most important thing that we are talking about or is happening, but will be replaced at that point by something else. That was number two. The third one, maybe the most controversial topic, but it's just an observation. I'm sure you've seen this accelerating more and more. The social justice issues, all sorts of them. The obsession with ethics, this is so Sagittarian again, and human rights, and trying to just work through that issue. Some people approach it very in a very mercurial way, in a very individualistic way. They're saying the most important thing is who I am as a person. All the rest of the categories that we choose to put ourselves in or not are not that important. Other people concentrate on them a lot. Things like your sexuality, your race, your country of origin, cultural background, all sorts of things like that. They're discussed a lot. I mean, obviously they are. And they are very much connected to Gemini and Sagittarius. There are no other signs of the zodiac that are so much potentially provoking debate and provoking even. So Gemini is provoking debate. Sagittarius is against debate. It already knows, and it already has a formula, and it wants to rather impose its own formula. So it's probably good to think about that. If Sagittarius goes wrong, then there is a rise of some more extreme things, extreme ideologies, people or institutions trying to impose control on human rights or on the speech. I chose to say speech here because it's Gemini and Sagittarius. It's just very exemplary. Another problem is the individual against the group. So what's more important, who you are or where you belong? That thing that I already mentioned. The whole atmosphere out there gets very politicized. Maybe you say that's because of the epidemic, and this stirred all sorts of other things. So now that because we have an emergency, worldwide emergency, we have to become more political because there's so many new political things to be dealt with, and we need to, choose a direction. Every single one of us, it's inescapable. I forgot to mention in the previous slide how Gemini is reminding us in this pandemic situation that we are all connected by the air, which is exactly what Gemini is about. The common connection by air. This is by the same air that we breathe, and that's inescapable for good or for bad. Now it's just the situation is making it obvious that even if you don't want to mix with some people, you are ultimately mixing with everybody that's in the same, say, vicinity as you at that moment, because you are ultimately breathing the same air. This is a little bit metaphorical, but isn't it the case that we are all connected, and in that Gemini way? And also the other way Gemini connects to the air is through the speech, through what now we can connect to the speech, even though you are on the other side of the world, some of you. So that's I think very important also. And yes, the politicizing effect is there, obviously, to me. I don't know where this is going to lead us, but maybe Neptune brought it over with the pandemic, and then the square from Neptune, now we're dealing with the result, and we're going to be dealing with the result in the following months. I know a lot of things are going on in the United States, and maybe what will happen there will determine the rest of the world's trends for the period after 2021, when we'll see. I'm a little bit concerned and scared, to be honest, about the next nodes, the nodes in Taurus and Scorpio, because I kind of think, all right, we can explore Sagittarius now and see what could, be a negative Sagittarian tendency, and we can try to do something about it. But when it comes to the next one, Scorpio, that would hit very hard in terms of exposing some hidden agenda and making things probably very difficult financially, emotionally, and in all sorts of ways that I'm trying to imagine now. That would be a result of what we do now and what choices we make now. And we would have to change practically our circumstances, Taurus, as a consequence of that. And finally, it's already starting, this exposure, I think. Now it's starting as simple information. So I see a lot of things online, for example, maybe you do too, that are literally exposing the facts of all sorts of power abuse by institutions, by people in power, many kinds, not just financial. And for the first time, this is available out there. You can witness it. What you think about it? I kind of expected a reaction more quickly. I was like, if you have a major case of, say, child abuse, which is something extremely sensitive, and that the moment it comes out and it's proven, I mean, I'm not talking about speculation, but something that really is proven, then that the public will react straight away and will be very disgusted and very like would want to make somebody accountable straight away. But this is not happening. What is happening is information is put out there and we can see lots of things. But maybe what's the problem at the moment is that Gemini energy is so scattered and so spreading itself thin that it's very difficult to make sense of it. It's very difficult to synthesize and to understand out of all of these things that are being spoken about and exposed and given, taken out in the public eye. We can't listen to everything. Like you said, Lynn. Well, I have a life to live as well, rather than constantly only listening to webinars and getting information. We would all be provoked to ask for more information and to get more mixed up with things and to be interested and more curious and so on. We would have to be ultimately, but I think this whole confusion is still not allowing a reaction. But that reaction will come in the next period. At least that's what I expect personally. So now we are about 20 minutes from the end. So if you want, we can. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot. I had another one for you. There was one more thing, just very quickly, I'll go through this. I couldn't miss this because it's such an important, I think, Gemini and Sagittarius axis topic, the education and the situation out there in education. It's obviously connected with everything else, but self-education is something that's seen and chosen a lot more often now than before. So alternative methods of learning, like what we're doing now. I think this gives a more of a personal choice, ability of people to decide their direction and to not rely on those traditional institutions, universities, schools. I mean, they very well can, but at the same time, we can see that a lot of them are going through quite a revolution at the moment. Their validity is questioned, their authority is questioned. The way the whole education system in general in the Western world is structured and organized, and how it's done, executed as well, is under a lot of scrutiny. And maybe we will see even more changes later on. So a lot of outdated practices need to be changed, and people choose more and more to self-educate. I'm a big fan of that personally. Most of my astrology education is a self-education. I look for all my own books and individual courses and individual things, but I don't think that necessarily to be a good psychologist or to be a good astrologer, you need to go on a very official, say, diploma course or bachelor's degree or something like that. Even very often I can see that even in the specialized professions, like doctors and lawyers and professions that cannot avoid that, there is a trend that this is somehow inadequate and people are looking for alternatives. And then at the same time, because of all of this confusion and misinformation spread around, we are all, as a society, desperate for answers, desperate to, we almost feel like in the past, Sagittarius, we used to have at least some answers, at least some guidelines and direction. What is going on now? We don't have any security in the information. So leads to the rise of new gurus and teachers and all sorts of people, some very knowledgeable and very helpful, others not that much, positive and negative in that sense, that are just giving answers. They're filling that gap, they're filling that need at the moment. So it's something that we should be very careful about, I believe, because that can easily lead us back to the negative Sagittarius trend of how being so desperate to have a guiding light, we just join everything or anything and willing to, follow somebody or something without questioning it too much and without checking the facts or checking our own, standing on things, but just blindly following it as a religion or as a cult or anything that it could be. Yeah, that's it, I believe. I will stop talking now. So we have the chance to have a little discussion. And if you have any questions or if you want to express your own thinking and opinions, which I encourage you to do. I mean, even though this is a webinar and you're not supposed to express anything personally, but feel free. I have nothing against that. So.
Well, I want to say thank you. This was wonderful.
Thank you.
Really made me start thinking about a lot of things I hadn't really thought about in the same way before.
So great to hear.
And I also want to apologize to Jean-Marc because I think I called you Jean-Pierre, but I know a couple of Jean-Pierres, so it just came out that way. But yeah, thank you. This was, very, very interesting to think about how this is affecting, not only me personally, but the world at large in ways I hadn't really thought about. So thanks.
I'm very happy to hear that. That was my idea in the beginning. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, obviously, this whole thing can become so much more personal for us if we look at our own charts. And I had this initial idea of including your charts and also looking into some of them, but I thought we won't have time for it. But maybe we can continue this conversation in one of the weekly discussions that I do every week. I invite those of you that are new today to join us. The link is in the chat box. So these are discussions we do every week, and we can next time we're doing questions and answers, which is quite unusual, as we normally choose a topic and we speak about the topic. But next week we decided to do a very, very open discussion, so we can ask ourselves different things. And there were several astrologers in the group, so I thought that would be a good chance for, if you want to ask something personal for your personal chart, for example, then we can give you different perspective of that question. Yeah. And yes, I think we can look at mostly the houses where the nodes are in your chart. This is what I'm exploring for myself at the moment, because all these issues that I talked about, they would come out somewhere in our lives personally, but it will be mostly to do with which houses they transit through.
Well, one of the things, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, that was all I was going to say.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought someone else was going to speak.
Did someone else want to say something?
I just lost the screen is all. When I went to write in the chat box, the whole screen is gone. I only see you guys.
Oh, I'm sorry, Raven. This sometimes happens because the Zoom is a bit funny. I think if you know how to, don't worry too much about it. We're almost at the end. As long as you hear us, that's fine. Yeah. And I just wanted to quickly say hi to Kay because Kay joined us later. I hope you managed to hear us, Kay. And I'll send you the recording later. Yes, thank you for the thumbs up. Any other comments, questions, criticism, please?
I was just thinking personally, when you put up on the screen the previous two times when the nodes were in Gemini, yep. North Node and South Node, that what I was going through at the times that those were, and it really fits again with what I'm going through in a different way, but it's the same type of thing.
Would you like to share a little bit more, just very generally?
Yeah, I can share. In 83 to 84. I was doing another career transition and getting divorced. So a whole new life start, which is kind of where I'm at right now as well. And then 2001 to 2003 not changing careers, but changing a whole lifestyle yet again, and you know, moving into whole new realms. And the Gemini is my 12th house, and so Sag is my 6th. So and it really does affect my everyday life, and also, you know, my more spiritual life. So I saw, oh wow, you know, I hadn't thought about it in terms of the previous times in which this was happening and the parallels that are going on now. Of course, differently, because all the outer planets are in different places for sure, but also the personal ones are in different spots at the same time. So it just a nice thing to think about. Yeah.
Yes, and when you say the planets are in different places, the slow planets, that also changes the actual circumstances that we're dealing with. So if in 2001 there was a crisis which was of a slightly different sort, but still in the same symbolical realm, isn't it? Because the symbols of Sagittarius and Gemini, they're wide, they're extremely wide. We can't touch of everything, but something of that sort was going on there. But then maybe if we go back and see where the outer planets were, whether there were any aspects from them to the nodes at the time, then that would make it more specific. That's why I thought the Neptune connection is probably the biggest connection of why do we have a pandemic and not something else? Why is it not a war? Why is it not something, you know, it could have been something else. And yeah, it's very fitting, isn't it?
Yeah, very fitting.
Radalina.
Yes.
I have a node question.
Yeah.
It sounds like what you're saying about the nodes is that when they're in those particular signs, they're really taking on the whole same kind of perspective of the sign itself. Like the sun in Sagittarius, the qualities seem to be what, accentuated by the node, or is that the primary reason, is to reflect the same qualities?
I think that if you have one of those two signs very prominent in your chart, and especially if it's your sun, either in Gemini or Sagittarius. I know you are a Sagittarius, Raven, so the way it could be relevant to you is that your sun is temporarily aligned with the South Node. And because with the South Node of the world, of society, is supposed to be something of a needing resolution, needing balance, needing a bit of repair, let's say, a bit of rethinking, then the world is dealing with the dark side of Sagittarius, while you are dealing personally with Sagittarius. So maybe because you were born with your birth chart to be some sort of an exemplar of Sagittarian energy in one way or another in the world, individually, to show us all what it is to be a Sagittarius, then if you're doing it well, maybe you can help to, you know, we can be one, you know, one point of the whole net that can help give ideas either how to be a positive Sagittarius or how to not to be a negative one. Yeah. So that would affect you directly. Maybe it's a little bit more likely to affect you negatively in terms of more challenging than the other way around. But yeah, it's going to be mostly around your birthday this year, because that's when the sun is actually going to be on the South Node.
Okay, I'm confused because I wasn't really talking about my chart.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I misunderstand you? What did you mean?
Because my node is actually not in Sagittarius. But I was just asking about the nodes themselves. When you say the nodes are in Sagittarius and Gemini, aren't they reflecting the same? Because it sounded like you're talking about the sun of those signs almost. Like Gemini being, you know, a communicator and this and that, Sagittarius being a traveler or whatever. It sounds like the nodes are those qualities. Is that wrong?
No, rather, these qualities are related to the signs, Sagittarius and Gemini. Okay. But when you have any planet in not just the sun, but just any planet in those signs, then this planet is motivated by the qualities of these signs and it acts through them. So if your Mars is in Sagittarius, your physical energy and drive is Sagittarian. If it's in, if your Venus is there, then the function of Venus is using that energy. So what I said was in general about the archetypes of Gemini and Sagittarius, but now they are the nodes. So the nodes, the past and the present, or the where we're coming from and where we're going towards. So these are just these become the topics of the day, we want it or not.
Okay.
And Redalina, what would you say or give advice to someone whose nodes are in the opposite sign? So my north node is in Sagittarius and my south node is in Gemini. I'm sure a lot of people have this placement. So how does what's going on in the world right now come into play, and what advice would you give to people like me?
Well, first of all, people like you would probably be the very first on my list of who I would ask for advice or who I would ask for opinion. Because this opposition that you've got to the current one in your own personal chart means that where the world is coming from, you are going in that direction. Where you are coming from, the world is going in that direction. So it's very similar mix. So if now there are certain dangers, let's say, the Sagittarian dangers, you are one of the people that is the least likely to fall into the trap of these dangers, because you kind of you are learning the Sagittarian energy, you are experiencing it anew. Maybe you can still be misled by it just because it's new for you, but usually the North Node works very positively for us if we use it. So for you, it's kind of safe to be a Sagittarius because you can these two South North Node, they kind of balance themselves in such a way that the South is not allowing the North to go into extremes. This is how every opposition in astrology is working. The two opposite signs are not allowing each other to go into extremes because they're constantly like reflecting each other. So I think you are in a very good position to have your own life path, your own nodes illuminated, discovered, revealed by the circumstances, because it will be the same topics, but just in the other way around. So you probably will be correcting people a lot, just intuitively, and or maybe you have a better chance to take certain actions in your life now, practically, that would be well decided, let's say. You would judge the situation, I guess, more objectively, because you are supposed to be an expert in Gemini area. But yeah, you are an expert, but don't forget that South Node, you did something maybe not the best way possible last time you had to deal with Gemini. So you would be better correcting the mistakes, but not necessarily very good in doing the new thing, if that makes sense to you.
Yeah, that makes sense. I do see that I have less control over my life right now, but I do seem to have more confidence for some reason. So yeah, it kind of aligns with what you said. Thank you.
You're welcome. Just final word on this, that if you have your nodal opposition now, that's called nodal opposition, when the nodes are in the opposite signs to the birth ones, this means that you are right in the middle right now of your own nodal personal cycle. And this is the culmination of that. So it's like a full moon for the nodes, for your nodes. And this is very often having exactly that effect that you said, that the person, this is when we are 9 years old, then what is it? So every 9 after, so 27 and so on, the middle of the cycle, when we have revelations, when we have a sense of completion, of maybe now we understand things, now we understand what this whole thing was all about, and it's very similar to the meaning of the full moon.
Yeah.
Okay, other questions or comments or opinions or whatever? How do you guys feel in that whole situation that we are in? Do you want to share a little bit? What is are you more pessimistic? Are you more optimistic? Do you think this whole chaos is for the good in the long term, or do you feel more like doom and gloom in the background?
I feel more inspired and excited about, like you talked in your last slide, the education part. I really resonated with how you spoke about like the traditional ways of education are kind of going away and being replaced by newer and more innovative and like self-paced learning. It's actually inspiring people like me to learn more about the things that were not possible in my everyday life. So, you know, it's really opening newer avenues and making people more courageous and bold to kind of pursue some options which were um, not so feasible earlier. So I'm inspired by that. Yeah.
Me too, me too. And especially how now it's not needed that much to be part of something, like part of a. I don't need to live in the UK to work in the UK anymore, for example. You know, it's opening the door to the world of so many resources that it will be interesting to see what happens when that much more people widespread have access and they can teach themselves and they can, you know, develop things. And I expect a lot of innovations later on, but we'll see.
I
Also,
need
the
to say
way the
goodbye.
idea of
Bye.
society.
Goodbye, Lynn.
Bye
Thank you so
bye.
much for being here.
Thank you.
Bye, Lynn. Also, the way society used to put emphasis on things like degrees and certificates, and you know how a very structural approach to education, it's kind of chipping away, and people are more like identifying and resonating with their own idea of what their education should be, and it's really even when we seek out professionals, like even doctors. These days, I mean, in Atlanta, I know that our doctors are doing like diagnosing over videos. I don't know about rest of places, but like when we talk about professionals, I mean, we are relying less and less on that personal, you know, the degrees and the offices and the personal touch, and more going with, you know, what we feel is okay. I mean, our definitions are changing a bit.
Absolutely. Yes, I was even going to include that about, sorry, about the certifications. It's not, this is probably how Gemini is a bit more practical. Like Gemini wants to, you know, have this almost like apprenticeship type of education where when you learn something, then you then start doing something with it. It doesn't just remain on a piece of paper you have a certification, but actually you can do anything. This is more Sagittarius. So it's people I think are getting to appreciate more and more a skill as a skill. And many hobbies are becoming professions as well. That's also part of it, I think.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yes? Yes, go ahead.
Oh, this is Bella.
Yes, Bella, I think you're...
I am maybe an Aquarian. I find it...
I'm very sorry, but we can't hear you very well. Is it possible your connection maybe...
Oh, it's me. Can you hear me?
I have a feeling it's your microphone. Maybe you're touching your microphone or something a little bit?
Oh, you can't. No, I'm not touching it now. Can you hear it now?
There is a bit of
I don't want to waste time.
No, don't worry at all. Actually, I had the same problem for a few weeks here in the UK. I don't know. I got a booster from my internet and it got solved, but... Yes, sounds like your connection is quite bad.
Yeah.
Would you like to maybe type something? I'm sorry, but we can't hear you. It's very blurred. It's very we're losing sound.
No, it's okay. Actually, it's not meant to be. Thank you.
No problem. You can type it on the chat if you want. If you have a questions, I will see it on the chat box and I can still respond. That's going to be easier. Oh, we have a question here by Kay. My North Node is 9 degrees Gemini, South Node Sagittarius. So we have the same situation, Kay, right? I'm not sure what it means for me. Well, first of all, to really say what it means for you, we need to see your whole chart. Unfortunately that's what would allow us to really say something sensible to you. But if you heard what I told Shinja earlier about having the reversed nodes, you can have the opposite concept now, where you are very much in line with the situation in the world right now, and you're actually going through your nodal return. This is personally something very important. This is such an important thing in someone's life, as maybe comparable to Saturn square Saturn, for example, or Uranus, making one of those. I don't know how familiar you are with astrology, how advanced you are, but the big transits that people follow of the planets that cause all sorts of crises and temporary challenges when they come to a certain point in their cycle for you, has a similar effect to the nodal cycle. So the nodes, when they come back to their original places every 18 and something years, almost 19, you should be going through something right now. Your life should be somehow transforming. But that can be more serious or not that serious, depending on what else is going on in your chart. Are there planets in Sagittarius and Gemini? Are there any planets in the other couple that's squaring those two, which is Pisces and Virgo, that I mentioned earlier? If you have a lot of Virgo and Pisces, then you would be under pressure a lot at the moment. Also, where are the nodes? In what houses? Are they around the ascendant, descendant? Are they somewhere else? So all these things need to be seen in order to say exactly how. But maybe join us next week on Thursday if you want. So it's I don't know where you are in the world. Maybe if you want, you can say, but it's London time, 4 o'clock, 4:30. Sorry, 4:30. Just half an hour later than today. Every Thursday. So next Thursday we will be having questions and answers. So you can come and you can ask that question, so we can see your chart and tell you more. You're in the UK. Okay, yeah, if you wish to join on Thursday, just keep an eye on my page and the Facebook groups, and I will post probably in a couple of days, the latest. I will post about that new event because it's still not there. Okay? Anything else?
When you talk about karma in the beginning,
Mm-hmm.
and you explained a lot about correcting certain things and all, it sounded a lot like when we talk about the 12th house bringing through ancestry and sometimes having to pay back in some way. Is there a connection there between the nodes and the 12th house ancestry?
Yes, I really like what Stephen Forrest is saying in his book Yesterday's Sky, that everything in the chart is karmic. Everything, not just the nodes. And the nodes are a bit of a indication, let's say, of how everything else is also karmic in the context of the node. So if the person is born with these nodes, then why Saturn is in the 12th house, for example? What can this give us as an idea of the whole nodal story there, the background story, which we're imagining at the end of the day? We never know it for sure, but the conditioning, I think of them more as a conditioning rather than as this sort of karma that, you did something and now you need to pay for it. No, maybe there are such situations, maybe partially in some particular cases when we have something like the nodes square Pluto, or the nodes involved in I don't know, in something that assumes, the symbol of it is something to do with violence. Maybe if Mars is affected, but there is no guarantee, of course, because if violence was part of it, you may have been the one suffering the violence, or you may have been the one that inflicted the violence. So we have no way to know by just looking at the chart. But in some cases, it's something more extreme. So there are different options for the nodes. One is you really did something wrong. So now you really are paying back, or you really are compensating, balancing in that way. Or maybe you did nothing wrong, but you just overdid something. So you had too much of the same meal, something like that. And now it's time for change, because otherwise there is stagnation and you can't move forward. Or maybe you were stopped midway. And these are the situations when the South Node is actually very positive. Dane Woodyer speaks a lot about these situations when counterintuitively the South Node is something very positive in the life of the person, but usually that's a contribution that they made. Let's say a great composer, but the node was showing the ability of being a great composer from the South Node, not from the North. And he did that, or a writer or something, somebody giving out something. And the South Node is the point of self-undoing, or so you exhaust yourself in order to give what you have. And maybe in the previous, say, lifetimes, you actually were very knowledgeable or capable, or already were ahead of things on some area. And now a sort of a child genius is born. Someone that already is very attuned to something and learns it very quickly, doesn't need to go through the whole laborious studying, but really gets it. And the idea of this sort of karmic situation is to be able to let it out, to be able to give it out, because the time probably was short before. They died too young, or something happened, something like that. If we go deeper into evolutionary astrology, it can be extremely interesting, I think. But yeah, I'm getting a bit carried away, so I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, one final, and I will tell you goodbye, if there is one final question. Is there? Jean-Marc.
Yeah, I feel a bit overwhelmed by. I don't have the state of mind of being able to say what are the trends now in the news or in the world. I feel that I am quite immersed in it.
Yeah, isn't that the best strategy?
So, well, I don't know if it's a strategy, but I'm feel more immersed, and I hear about a number of things on the news when I'm listening to the news, or on social media, because you can escape them. But I'm not able at all to. I am interested with this interpretation of Gemini and Sagittarius you gave. There was, well, hopefully most of it I knew them, but there was some moments where you pointed out things I didn't thought about in the interpretation of the signs. But I'm not able to think, oh, okay, there is more of this in the news now that there was before, that I'm completely unable to
I have
comment.
deliberately been listening for these things so that I can pick them up, rather going in the other way, seeing, okay, I'm dealing with Gemini and Sagittarius. Where is the Gemini out there and where is the Sagittarius? So it was mostly that way. But yeah, I understand. And I think you were actually on the right track, because I feel like we need to wait. That so much is happening in Gemini, and so conflicting things are happening that we can easily be provoked to make a big conclusion, Sagittarius, without having enough information, Gemini. And it's very difficult when things are so recent to see the big picture. So if we try to be Sagittarius that sees the big picture, we're too close, so we don't have the big vision. The vision needs distance. So I will finish with that I think that the more we get forward, the more we'll be able to see. But now what we need to do is Gemini, gather information, study, listen, ask questions, and then we'll see later what that's gonna reveal. That's what I feel ultimately. Okay.
Thank you, Catalina.
Thank you so much, everyone, for coming, and I hope to see you next time and next week as well. Again, if you have anything, just drop me a line.
Wonderful session. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.